All right, we're back. Let's try again. Round two. Round two. Let's get it. If you're in here right now, please double tap. It's the most helpful thing you can do right now. Please just double tap. Get those numbers up. We get some people in here. Get some conversations going. That's the idea. We just want to expose people who are currently religious to ideas that maybe they haven't heard before. Um, Press them a little on their beliefs. I think it's a very, very important question to meditate upon and to question and to dive into. I really, really do. I think that I am incredibly, incredibly grateful for the people who pressed my religious beliefs a little bit when I was younger, just enough to help me realize that it was all essentially nonsense and it was unwise for me to act like it was real. Um, so yeah, please just double tap. The higher that number in the top left corner gets from your tapping, the more people TikTok is going to send in here. That's what we love. Um, Usually we've got a few hundred people in here. I think our highest ever like count is like 230,000 likes or something. So it often goes off. It really does. So if you want to be part of that, please just double tap away. We'll get some people in here. Thank you so much for any time and attention that you share with us. I'm very, very grateful for all of it. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Hey, thank you. You too. Hopefully the connection's a little bit better this time. I've tweaked a couple of things and hopefully it'll behave itself. We'll see how we go. But yeah, which God do you believe in and why? That is the question. I was born into a religious household myself. I was raised Christian. My parents taught me a real combination of Pentecostalism, Baptism, evangelism, Protestantism, just a real mishmash of Christian theologies and doctrines. Uh, I was taught to believe in exorcisms um, and possession and spiritual warfare and soul ties and heaven and hell and you know, miracles and all that kind of thing, faith healing, speaking in tongues, all of that stuff. That's what I was indoctrinated into. And I can tell you that it's after having learned to see it for what it really is, it's awful. It's horrific stuff, and it destroys childhoods, in my opinion. I think it's emotionally, psychologically abusive. I really do. And I don't think that the people who teach their children to believe the things that they believe are knowingly doing these horrible things to their children either. I think that the parents who might teach their children these things really believe it. They think they're doing the right thing, you know? I have no hatred for religious people. I have only contempt for religion itself. Religious people, I've got nothing but love for, Like the rest of us, religious people can't help what they believe. The human brain does not get to choose what it believes. It's presented with information that is either compelling or it isn't. And it decides what to do next based on what it believes about reality. And that's how we all are. That's how everyone is. That's not just religious people, that's every mind being generated by a brain. That's what we're all doing. We're just going off of the best information that we've had presented to us. So if you've only ever been presented information that supports a particular religion being true, and you've not had someone adequately challenge your position, of course you believe that. Of course you believe what you believe. You know, I don't think religious people are stupid. I don't think religious people are evil. I don't think religious people are any less deserving of respect or being treated as though they have dignity than anyone else. I really don't. But the religion itself, I think, must be pressed. We really, really must challenge it, in my opinion. I think it's a destructive force on the whole. I think it's horrible. I think we're much, much better off without it. Thank you so much for all those taps so far. I really, really appreciate that. Almost 3K likes in like 2 minutes. There's like 70 of you in here already. Thank you so much. Please keep double tapping. The higher that number gets, the more people TikTok will send here, and that's what I really, really want. Just people in here listening, being exposed to ideas, learning things. That's the goal. So thank you so much to everyone who has helped us get to where we currently are right now. It's awesome. Let's have a chat. Before the username is familiar, as is the profile picture. Every love, can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you, Daniel. How are you? How you been?
Hey, I'm fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for your time, my friend. Would you please remind me, have we spoken before?
I think 2, 3 months ago, maybe.
Yeah, I
A
think we
short
have.
conversation.
I
Short
think
conversation. It got cut off. We couldn't continue. You had a lot of guest requests down there.
got you,
Yeah.
got you. Well, look, you're gonna have to forgive me.
Mhm.
My memory is really not so good that I can remember
No
what we may
problem.
have
I
spoken
know. I
about.
know. A lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
Do
I
do
understand.
you believe in a God?
I believe in the concept of God. I believe
Okay.
nobody can understand what a God is, or nobody can know what a God is by definition.
Okay. Okay,
Because I
got you.
believe God, yeah, God in the traditional sense, it expresses the ultimate reality or the capital T truth. Okay? Behind every creation, there is a creator, kind of. Behind time and space. That reality is incomprehensible for us by definition.
Okay,
You
sure.
believe that?
Do you,
It-
no,
yeah.
not necessarily.
But,
No, I
but I
don't. I think that we
you
could we
think
could
we
jump
can
to that
comprehend that?
conclusion. Excuse me?
We can understand. Do you believe we can understand ultimate reality?
I believe that
The
we
God's
can't
eye view?
I believe that
Yeah.
we can't jump to the conclusion either way. That's what I believe,
Yes. Yeah.
I
So,
think that
yeah.
to jump to the conclusion that reality is entirely incomprehensible is to give up too early. We're making so much headway, and we
Mhm.
have been for thousands of years, slowly at first, but more and more as we make more and
Mhm.
more advancements in, the instruments that we've been able to devise to help us measure and observe our environment. I think that to claim with certainty that we can never understand how the universe fundamentally works, I think that's a really sad position to be in, to be honest. I think that
It
saying
is. It
something
is. Yeah.
like, currently we don't understand everything, but that's okay. Let's keep going and see what else we can figure out.
Mhm.
And
Think
until
of it this
we
way.
feel as
Yeah.
though we've reached some kind of dead end, let's not jump to
Yes.
conclusions. That's how I feel about
Yes.
it.
Think of it this way. Think of it this way. Human beings are fundamentally limited and finite beings in time and space. We die. Okay. We get sick. We have problems. We have limited perceptions. Our brain cannot understand each and every detail of existence. So we have this spotlight effect. You know what a spotlight effect is?
I think I
We
understand what
prioritize,
you're referring
yeah,
to.
we,
Yeah.
we prioritize our perception. We prioritize it. We cannot pay attention to everything at the same time because there
Hmm.
are infinite amount of facts and we have limited amount of perception. So we
Well,
have
there
to
seems to be an
prioritize.
infinite. Yeah, there seems to be an
Infinite.
infinite amount of information. Yeah.
Yes.
We
So
can't know
when you
that we
see
can't
at a
know that there
tree,
is, but it seems that way.
yes, yes. Even to our minds, it's like an ant trying to understand what a human being is. An ant can only understand parts of the human. Maybe it's physicality, maybe it sees how we move. That's all it can understand about human beings, an ant. It cannot understand our emotions, our feelings, where we come from, our technology, our culture, none of that. Because it is limited by definition, right? So
Hmm.
the concept of God was invented, I would say, evolved for us to navigate in this world. Okay, we have
Yes.
to navigate either way. Whether we like it or not, we have to live. We have to do certain things over other things. And at the same time,
Well,
we're going to have to live with other people. We're going to have to communicate. We're going to have to compete. We're going to have to cooperate. We're going to have stable culture, society. So by definition, we need something that can unite these people. Otherwise,
I think
you
that
see where I'm going with this? So that, yeah.
I think I do. I think I do.
Yeah,
I think I have
yeah,
had this
yeah,
kind of conversation with people before. But to just
yeah,
clarify, I don't think that it's strictly true that we do have to cooperate or solve problems
yeah,
or even
yeah.
live, you know.
Can I
I think
ask?
that
Sorry, how
people
do
do
you? Yeah,
take
yeah,
their own
yeah, yeah.
lives, you know, and people do choose
True.
to leave society behind. Personally, I think we're better off alive than dead. You know, that's my opinion. But I also haven't
Why
lived
is that?
every other person's
Yeah.
experience, and I think that if someone
Why do you think
really
that
were
is,
to
Daniel?
feel as though they were experiencing such suffering that they would rather not experience
Mhm.
anymore, well, that's not really my business ultimately. Um, I think
True,
that
true.
where you seemed to be heading before, regarding the concept of God more or less being used as a kind of social glue, right? A way to aid in the
An
cohesion
ideal,
of a society. I think that
something to look
that can be the
forward to. Yeah,
case.
yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
that can be the case, but I think that it's also true that people who don't have any faith in any God have wonderful
Mhm.
communities as well. You know, I personally, I much prefer my atheist community to any religious community that I ever knew when I was younger. So I think
Mhm.
that it's
Mhm.
not true to say that belief in a God we can't prove is necessary.
Mhm. Think of it this way. Yeah, yeah.
I think
It's
that
a lot
using it
that
as
you're
some kind
saying.
of
Yeah.
reward, what you're about to say before that, you know, it
Not,
gives us
not,
something
not,
to look
not, not
forward
reward.
to as well. I think that
Here's the thing.
honestly,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
offering some kind of heaven as some kind of reward to look forward to, yeah, that's one
Mhm.
thing. But I also don't think that hell as a threat is
Mhm.
the kind of thing that any god worth our respect would create
Mhm.
either, you know. So even if we were to presuppose that one of these
Mhm.
gods, specifically an Abrahamic monotheistic god, is real, and there really is a heaven and a hell, I don't have respect for that kind of entity anyway, because we're
Mhm.
being threatened. Well, it's not a free choice to believe in them and then get heaven. We're being
Mhm.
threatened
Mhm.
with eternal suffering if we can't
Forever.
believe in them despite the lack of decent evidence.
Yeah, think of it this way. Think of it this way. You as a person, as a human being, you move from point A to point B. Okay?
Hmm.
That's life. You wake up in the morning, you do your stuff, you act in a certain way for you to move from point A to point B. Okay? That's life. Either you're stagnant or you're moving. Okay? Because we're moving as human beings, we go from point A to point B, B from C. That's the life of a human being. So in
Hmm.
order for you to move from point A to point B, you have to have a picture of point B. You have to have a map of point B. Otherwise, you're lost. You don't know where you're going. Or you're just winging it, kind of whatever it is, whenever, you know what I mean?
We are
Just as it
lost.
is, a blind road. Yeah, you get lost, obviously. So you need a map, okay, to reach to your destination.
No,
Otherwise,
I don't think
you're
so.
gonna spend the rest of your life wondering where B is.
No,
You
not
see where I'm?
necessarily.
So here's my question. We need a map to go from A to B.
No,
Otherwise, we're lost.
no, that's not true.
Or is it random?
No, I mean, if you know how to
How do you?
navigate your environment in other ways, you don't necessarily need a map. That's simply not true. I mean, if you understand how
Yeah,
to get
my
to high
point.
ground
I'm
and
using.
use
Yeah, I'm
landmarks, you can
using.
use your environment and your understanding
I'm
of the
not saying
environment
literally.
to make your own way. And in the same way, I think that
That's not my point,
if you're
Daniel.
trying to position a
I'm using it
religion as
symbolically.
something of
I'm using it
if
symbolically.
you're
No,
trying
no, I'm
if
not
you're
using. I'm not going to
I
religion.
understand. Yeah,
That's
this
not
is
my
what I'm
point. Yeah,
saying.
you have to hear my point. Yeah.
I recognize that you're being symbolic. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that
Yes.
using
So.
religion. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is that using a religion as an analogy
I'm
to
not
a
saying
map
we have to use
falls
religion.
short because we don't need maps. They can be helpful, yes, but maps can also be wrong and send us in the wrong direction, right? So
Think of it
we
this
don't
way.
need maps.
No, no,
They can be helpful. They
Daniel,
can also be
can
wrong.
I say something? I have to finish my point though, for you to understand. With all due respect, I'm sorry. Let me make my point, then you can address it in whatever way you want. Try to understand where I'm going with this. That's all I'm trying. I want to hear
Okay.
what you think about this. Genuinely. So here is the thing. By definition, any human being who aspires to be something needs to have an aspiration. You need goals, you need plans, you need a destination point. Otherwise, we're walking blind like monkeys. Okay? So in order to reach that place, okay, what it means to be at the top, what it means to be at the highest, we need to have collected wisdom of the past. Okay? You're not like a kid waking up in the morning trying to figure out the world from scratch. You need thousands and thousands and thousands years of trials and errors, experiments of your ancestors, collected wisdom, collected knowledge of the past for you to understand your place in the world. You're 80 years old, Daniel. With all the technologies, with all the medical support, you're going to live up to 90. 90 years compared to thousands, hundreds of thousands of human evolution is zero. It's a dot in existence. So by definition, you're going to need to stand on the shoulders of giants for you to survive in this world. In other
I
words,
agree with
a
that.
lot of
Yes.
people
Oh no,
have to pay
sorry, no, I
blood.
don't. I don't agree with that. No.
Collected wisdom is my point. The wisdom has to be collected throughout humanity.
Are you
Okay?
suggesting?
Evolution of knowledge.
Are
Yeah,
you
let me make my
suggesting?
point. So, yeah, all that collected wisdom gives us aspiration. What to look forward to. Okay? So there is this idea. What is the perfect human? What should Daniel aspire to be? Should he aspire to be the most empathetic, sympathetic, very loving, nice individual? Or should he be a warrior, a soldier, very disciplined, very strict, very... What is Daniel aspiring to be? You have to have a picture of Daniel 2.0 in order for you to grow into it. You have to have a picture first. That's the world of imaginations and mythology. That's what I'm talking about. So you need to have a picture of the hero first for you to look up to something. Otherwise, all of that collected wisdom, all of that blood, all of that experiment, all of those wars, tribalism is for nothing. If you're going to start all over again from scratch and you think, Daniel, you can figure it out within 80, maybe 90 years, you think you can figure it out? I don't think so. You need all that process of humanity for you to understand what wisdom is, what to do, when to do it, how to talk to a person, when to talk to a person, when to be nice, when to be harsh, how to treat your enemy, how to treat your friends, how to act in an emergency situations, how to act in a good situation. So these things are complex. You need interconnected virtues. You need a personality, a mode of being for you to go from point A to point B. And I'm saying religion, generally speaking, it creates that map, that psychological map, for us to reach from point A to point B. Point B is Jesus Christ in Christianity. In Islam, point B is Muhammad. Okay? Their own figures, the heroes of those figures, act like Christ. Turn the other cheek. Okay? Bow down and wash the feet of your disciples, the highest serving the lowest. These types of mentalities helps you earn, quote unquote, heaven. I'm concentrated on the earning of heaven, not the heaven itself. I want to earn it. Okay? What does that mean to earn? You have to walk the walk. You have to suffer. Being good is not easy. That's my point. You have to take a lot of punches. You have to understand a lot of things. You need wisdom in your life, Daniel. That's all I'm saying. And you sitting here, I figured it out. We don't need religion. It's all nonsense. All these thousands of years, throw it out in the garbage. No problem. Kumbaya. That's not how reality works, in my perspective. You need to slowly progress. You see, so I think USA, right? Meditation. I'm sorry, Daniel, but you have to understand these things. You know, I've heard your talks. I think you're an anti-theist. You're not only an atheist. You don't like religion itself, even the concept of religion itself. But I would say you're going against the very instinct of human being itself, in my perspective, because we have a tendency to believe something that is higher than us, whether it be a hero, a star, a politician, an ideology, anything that is higher than us. That's humanity for you. So I would say you rather have thousands of years collected wisdom, or 50 years ideology, or 50 years politics, whatever it is. You need something to push you in the world. Okay? You there?
All right. So do you mind if I respond?
No problem.
All right, cool. So there are just too many things in what you just said that I completely disagree with and that are just factually wildly inaccurate. I really don't know where to begin, to be honest. Uh, let's just start with this, perhaps. Eri Love, do you think that believing something is true means that it is true?
I believe there is a difference between belief and knowledge.
Okay,
Knowledge is
fantastic. I agree.
a description of the objective reality. Belief is what you stake your life on. What do you live by? That's belief for me.
Okay,
It's the
cool.
living part.
All right, fantastic. So I would agree with you if you say that knowledge and belief are different things. I would say that knowledge is it's a subset of belief, right? Knowledge is a belief that is also supported by sufficient reason and can be justified using the evidence, right? I agree that just belief in general and knowledge, they're different things. So it sounds like we're on the same
Mhm,
page
mhm.
when it comes to that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's my point. There is a difference between living and describing. Religion is about living, science is about describing. You see the difference? How do you live and what
Uh,
is there are completely different things.
Okay,
Or
so
in other words, what matters and matter are different.
so
Sorry, Daniel. Then I get it.
it's all good. So I think that honestly, science can tell us a lot about how we best live as well. I don't think that we require religion in order to form some kind of framework within which we make decisions and choices about, our life from moment to moment. I really don't. I see no proof that religion is necessary for this. I see evidence that religion has served this purpose for many people and even for many communities over the course of human history and around the globe, but I don't think that it's necessary. Okay. This is perhaps where we most fundamentally differ by the sounds of things. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to think that religion is necessary. We have to have a religion in order to make decisions and acquire wisdom or to do anything worth
Yeah,
anything to anyone else.
yeah.
To
I'm
to
saying
feel as though we have
religion.
some kind of moral framework. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm saying religion is inevitable. Whether we like it or not, we are religious towards something.
Okay,
I'm saying
so
which should,
do you,
yeah.
do you know what the word religion means?
Yeah, belief in a set of axioms, presuppositions.
No. So religion is the belief in or worship of a god or gods. That's what a religion is. Okay, so
But you have
I'm
to
not
believe,
I'm not
yeah,
religious.
yeah.
I'm not religious.
Before you
So
can
I
live,
don't have that.
yeah.
And therefore, when you said
Mhm.
that religion is inevitable, that's wrong. That's just not a true fact.
You're
Okay,
not
because
a
I am not
supernaturalist.
religious.
You're not a supernaturalist. You don't believe in the
That's correct.
supernatural. You don't believe in the old man in the sky. Let's say.
Well, the
I'm talking about
supernatural.
religion. Yes, the supernatural is the unseen, unmoved mover, the hand that is in what do you call the hand that is acting in our lives, the supernatural forces, the demons, the angels, the gods, the leprechauns. That's supernaturalism. I'm not talking about supernaturalism. I'm talking about living and acting on certain principles, on certain faiths, on certain axioms. This
Sure.
is this is my foundation. I'm gonna live my life with these foundations. That's
Sure.
what I
That's
understand religion to be. Yeah.
sure. But this isn't strictly religion. Like I said, Eri Love, religion by definition is the belief in and worship of a deity or deities. I don't have that. And there are hundreds of millions of people who don't subscribe to that either. So to say that religion is inevitable, to repeat myself, that's not true. Okay. You might feel as though religion benefits you. You might feel as though religion is common. You might feel as though religion is useful for many things. But to say that religious belief is inevitable, that's just not true. Okay. I'm not religious. Hundreds of millions of people are religious. At the risk of repeating myself too many times, religion is not inevitable. Okay.
What do you think
So
worship is? How do you understand it, Daniel? Well, how do you define worship? Word for word.
perhaps,
What is it?
perhaps we could use your definition. How would you
Okay.
define worship?
Wisdom. Worship is imitation, in my opinion. To imitate. Okay. First, you identify
Okay.
what is highest. Okay. First, you identify what.
Oh, are you there? Hello. Are you there, mate? I think we might have lost Erilove. Erilove, can you hear me, man? Come in, come in. I think we've lost Erilove. All right. I'll have to remove him. Erilove, if you are
Can
still,
you hear me?
oh, here we
Can you
go.
hear me? I'm back. I'm back.
I can
I'm
hear
back.
you.
My
Can you hear
connection.
me?
Yes, I can hear you. I have a
Okay,
third world connection. Yeah. Here is the
sure.
thing. Here is the thing. First, we identify what is the highest. What is the highest? The highest personality. What does it encompass? All knowing, all loving, all powerful. That is the highest. It's a conceptualization. I'm not saying literally it is. Inside your imagination, you think of whatever high is. Okay? So in my head, the highest is all powerful, all knowing, all wise, everywhere. Okay? That's the highest. Second, worship. What does it mean to worship? To worship is to imitate, is to try to adopt personality traits that can make you closer to that ideal, that highest ideal that you put in your imagination. So you need figures who embody that ideal. In Christianity, that ideal is represented by Christ. Who is Christ? What did he went through? You know about his life, I'm sure. So you try to imitate Christ. You try to live your life as Christ lived. When his nation betrayed him, when his people betrayed him, when his best friend betrayed him, how did he handle it? What did he do? He carried his cross and walked uphill. I try to live as that.
Erilove,
That's the concept of worship, in my point. Yeah.
Erilove, are you aware that Jesus was pro-slavery?
How would he be pro-slavery?
Have you read the Bible before?
Yes, I have. I have.
You didn't notice that Jesus advocates for slavery?
He had two rules. Number one, he said, love your God with all your heart, your mind. Number two, he said, love your enemies as yourself, your neighbor as yourself. Period.
That's not what I asked, Erilove. Did you not
That was his
notice,
message to
Erilove? Did
humanity.
you,
Yeah.
Erilove? Please listen. The
Yeah.
the question that
Okay.
I asked you was, did you notice that Jesus was pro-slavery, explicitly pro-slavery?
Not in my understanding of Jesus Christ. Maybe in your understanding, you can tell me. How did you interpret it?
Okay, sure. So explicitly, Jesus says that slaves are to be good to their masters, especially if they have Christian masters. Uh, that's just one passage where Jesus speaks about how he feels about
How do you
slavery and that it should
understand
be a
that?
thing.
How do you understand that?
That's
You understand
almost
it
word.
literally as
That's
it is?
that's almost word for word what the passage says. Now, if you're going to say something like, "I shouldn't interpret that literally," well, now what you're
Uh-huh.
doing is you're setting up a framework within which you can move the goalposts wherever and however many times you like. If you honestly think that that kind of framework is going to be
Uh-huh.
convincing to people as a reliable framework for morality, then I
Think
think
of
you
it
should
this way.
probably
Yeah,
reconsider.
I understand. You should see the team. Do you understand the concept of a team? So, Daniel, you're a person who's an atheist, who acts in a certain way, who lives in a certain way, who talks in a certain way. That's the personality of Daniel. Okay? And then a person comes and tell me Daniel was pro-slavery, and I'm seeing Daniel. I know how he acts. I know how he talks. I know how he treats his friends. I know how he treats his enemies. I know everything about Daniel. And a person comes to me, Daniel was an evil man. So in my understanding, I have to analyze the whole collection of what Daniel is about. So when you analyze the whole collection of what Jesus is about, his theme, his message, how he lived, slavery doesn't seem to be one of his personality traits as a person. Or are you saying that's an
But he
exception to his personality?
explicitly
Yeah,
states it multiple times in the Bible.
that's
That's the
that's
difference.
that's what that's why I asked you. You should interpret it within the context of the personality of Jesus. What does he mean when he says slaves? What does he mean when he say masters? What does he mean when he says no Jew nor Gentile, not worldly, this, that, everybody is equal in the eyes of God? That's one message. And he
Again,
says slavery is okay in that other message. So connect it for me. You have this whole personality, this character, this figure, who literally says he gave his life for everybody. And he's saying at the same time, we should own slaves. Is that how you see Christianity, meaning a cult of owning slaves? Do you see that in the world? Christians owning, we have 2.8 billion
yes.
Christians worldwide in a lot of countries. So are
Historically,
you somehow,
yes. Historically the Bible has been used to codify slavery into law of many states.
yes. Do you also know Christianity was used to fight against slavery by quoting
This
man
is
and woman are made in the image of the highest good, the
every
concept of
love,
sovereign individual, the
every
concept
love,
of words, value.
every
Yeah,
love.
you have to understand these
This
things
is the
is what
point
I'm
that I'm
saying.
making,
Yeah.
mate. This is the point that I'm making is that this text,
Yeah.
the Bible, it is contradictory in many instances. So
It
if you're
depends on
going
how
to
you
say,
understand it.
Ari
Yeah.
Love, please listen for a moment.
Okay. Okay.
Ari Love, when you say something like, we have to consider, these specific terms in context or whatever, like I said before, and at the risk of repeating myself, you're trying to have it both ways, okay? You're creating a framework within which you can just move the goalposts about what's morally acceptable and what's not, and what's ideal in a role model. You can just shift and change it as much as you want, even when this text is clearly in contradiction with itself, and it probably doesn't even actually align with what you think is right. Let's just clarify, perhaps, because I shouldn't presume things about you. Ari Love, are you in support of slavery?
Obviously not.
Well, it's not obvious because there are people who are. I've had people on here who are pro-slavery. So it's not obvious to me. Okay, I don't want to
It
presume
depends.
anything
It
about you.
depends. Yeah. It depends when
It
we're living.
depends.
It depends where we're living. It depends. It depends. It depends on
Okay.
your axioms, how you see the world, how you see humanity, how you treat your enemies, how you see. There are. It's not black and white. I agree. It's like saying, I am against poverty. What do you mean by that? Of course, everybody's against poverty. What do you mean? It's the
No.
details that make a difference. That's the point. It's
Not
not all.
everyone is against poverty. That's the thing. There are people who are pro poverty because it benefits them for other people to be in poverty. Eri
Mhm.
Love, just to clarify, are
I'm
you
not
or
against
are
slavery.
you not pro slavery?
I am not pro-slavery.
Okay. No matter the
Yeah.
context?
It depends on the context, definitely.
Can you give me a context within which you believe? Thank you so
Yeah,
much for the cowboy hat. Can you give me a context within which you
yeah,
think that we should accept slavery?
yeah. In my country, Eritrea, it's an East African country. So in our history, okay, in our fights with the neighboring Ethiopian country, okay, when they captured our people, our soldiers, okay, they had two choices. Two choices meaning either we enslave you guys or we kill you guys. Okay? That was either you work for us meaning indefinitely, You do whatever we tell you, okay? If we want to have sex, no problem. If we don't want to have sex, no problem. Whatever we want, you do it. Or we kill you. In that setting, our generals, Eritrean generals, they told them you can enslave them, no problem. Okay? In that setting, in that circumstance, des or slavery, we chose slavery. You
Okay, so
understand?
what I'm saying, I'm not asking
Yeah.
you whether you would prefer slavery to death. What I'm asking you is,
Mhm.
do you think it should be that people take slaves
For fun, as in normally you take slaves, survival of the fittest kind of life.
at all?
For fun, for no reason, no context, nothing, no politics, just I want a slave, take one.
No,
That
no,
type of slavery, I don't agree.
I'm asking you in
I
any context. Do you think that taking slaves, not being
Yeah,
enslaved, but taking slaves, should be accepted?
like I said, it depends. It depends on the time, it depends on the politics, it depends on the context, it depends on who you're enslaving, why, what is the reason. It's not 21st century Western civilization, everything is peaceful. We can decide what is right or wrong. There are circumstances in life that can push you towards that thing. It depends on that time. We're not wiser than the past people, Daniel. You just have better a proximity to knowledge, to rationality. They had wisdom, they had the way of life. Why? We don't understand it. They have their own reasons, they have their own justifications, why they did what they did. And I can picture myself, okay, in a situation, why, in a situation where I would choose to be enslaved. I can picture my life in that circumstance. Okay, so that is my point. You need to have some perspective, Daniel. It's not, are you against this? The Bible is against that, so the Bible is wrong. Are you this? 2000 history, it's nonsense. We know better. We have technology, we have knowledge, we're better. That mentality, in it of itself, is the problem. You need to put it in context. Why did they choose slavery? Were they somehow different than me? Were they somehow, they're humans like you? Okay? They're living in their lives in that circumstance. What happened for them to engage in that lifestyle? Universally. You go to China, that's the
No,
case. You
no.
go to
I
Arabs, that's the
think
case. Why is the
I think you
conflict?
might be misinterpreting what slavery is. When I'm asking you whether I think we should accept slavery, I'm not saying do
Mhm.
you think you should uh, ever choose slavery over something else? I'm saying do you think that we should allow slavery? I'm saying do you think that taking slaves is a good thing to do? Not whether choosing enslavement over death as someone on the receiving end of the threat from the person taking the slaves. I'm saying, do
Mhm.
you think that we should accept people taking slaves in any context?
Like I said,
Do you see the
I don't
difference?
accept it. I understand
Okay.
you. Yes, yes, I see the
All right,
difference.
good.
I don't agree. I don't agree with randomly taking people to make them your slaves.
Well,
First, it depends
it's
on
not
what you mean by.
random. It's not random to take a slave for the purpose of, free labor
Yeah.
or for the purpose
Hmm.
of, just having a sex slave or something. That's not just random.
Yeah.
That's someone having a direct, deliberate purpose for taking that person and then treating them as though they are their physical property. They're an object at this point. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying people just randomly taking slaves. I'm saying the slavery that we know existed in history. Do you think that that
Yeah.
was good of the enslavers to have done? Do you think taking slaves should
Hmm.
be accepted?
No, it should not be accepted. I agree
Okay.
with you, but
So
sometimes
so
it
what
is
you're saying
necessary.
now, so what you're saying now is that you
Yeah.
disagree with Jesus. Okay? So if Jesus is, for the sake of this
Yeah.
argument specifically, if Jesus is, by your standards, this hero by
Ideal.
which
Yeah.
by which sure, like this ideal, this hero archetype, right?
Yeah.
That we should aspire
Yeah.
to be like. We should aspire to be Christian, which literally means Christ-like, right? if you're
Imitate, yeah,
saying
yeah.
that we should aspire to be like that, but then you're also right now saying you actually disagree with their moral standard, then you're just saying that
Yeah,
you actually don't think Jesus is a good role model. You don't think that they're a good archetype to emulate or to
yeah.
worship. To
See,
use your definition, you're
yeah.
saying we shouldn't worship Jesus. And I agree with you. I agree with you if that's what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
So how
I'm
do you
saying
square what you just said? How do you square what you just
yes.
said about thinking taking slaves is wrong with what Jesus said in the Bible about the
Yes.
justification for taking people as slaves?
Yes. Two things. Two things. Number one, collection of traits. What is collection of traits? You see the holistic picture of what Jesus Christ is
Every
representing.
love,
That's the
every
key
love,
of
every
anything.
love,
Number one.
every love, every
Number two,
love,
when it comes to
every
slavery,
love, every love.
okay.
You're diverging so far from the question, mate. Just the question that I asked you.
You're asking me, you
Okay,
disagree with Jesus. I'm
why?
telling you, it depends on
I'm
what you
not,
mean
no,
by Jesus.
every love.
What is he?
You're not
Yeah.
listening, mate. You're not listening. You're dodging the question that I'm asking you. How do you
I don't
square
understand. Yeah.
saying something like we should be like Christ whilst also saying that
Context.
you disagree with Christ? That doesn't make sense.
Context.
That's contradictory.
Context is how I align these views. Context.
And
Why?
what you've already said though, Every Love, is that the taking of slaves is
I
not a good
already
thing in
said
any
sometimes
context.
it is necessary. Sometimes it is necessary.
You think it's necessary to
It,
take people as slaves.
sometimes, one, in certain circumstances, two, if it's necessary, three, it is applicable, four. That's context. It's not whatever I want, whenever I want in life. You have to put it in perspective. What do
No, no,
they
no,
mean
no,
when they
no,
say
no.
slaves? What
That's
do they mean when they mean masters? How
so
are they
property.
interpreting it? What is the
Owning another
yeah.
human as property. You can do with them as you
is
please. If they don't do what you tell
is
them, you can beat them, you can starve them, you can whatever you like.
is
They're your
murder wrong,
property.
Daniel? Is
In
killing wrong to you,
in my
Daniel?
in my opinion, yeah, I don't think murder is moral. No. I mean, are you if you're just trying to change the subject, we can talk about something else if you really need to, but at this point I'm really struggling to take. Can you hear me, Ari Love? I think we've lost him again. All right. I think we might have. Can you hear me one last time? Testing. Can you
I
hear me,
think
Ari Love?
I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Excellent.
So
All right.
this is my point,
If you're
Daniel.
gonna
Here's the
go
said,
to murder
yeah.
instead,
Let me
my
not a
personal
problem.
opinion
Let
on
me just
murder,
address the
we
question.
can. If we're going to go to my
No.
personal opinion on murder, we can go there if you need to.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather remain on topic, if you don't mind. Do you mind if we remain on topic? Hello, Ari Love, can you hear me? All right, we might have to. All right, we might have to go. Ari Love, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I think it's the most valuable thing that any of us have, you know. So, thank you so much for the effort that you put into that conversation. I very much appreciate it. Uh, just to clarify my position, I do not believe that there is any context within which taking a slave should be advocated for. I This is an interesting comment here from E is saying Daniel asked about slavery because he couldn't counter argument with Eri. E, I'm not sure which conversation you think you're listening to. I explicitly was trying to keep Eri Love on topic so that we could get to the bottom of the discrepancy between his personal stance on slavery and what he was saying he thinks is good advice from Jesus. Uh, and then also claiming that Jesus is, you know, a good role model. Um, I'm not sure which conversation you think you're listening to, but that's simply not what was going on here. Um, Let's take a moment. Thank you so much for these numbers. Look at these numbers. We're a couple of K away from 30K. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. There's like 250 people in here right now. Anyone in here right now, if you can be bothered at all, please just double tap the screen. The higher that number gets, the more people get sent in here. And that's what I want most of all. It's just people listening to the conversation, hearing the arguments being gone through, and some ideas being exposed to the religious, ideally, so that they can begin to recognize the valid criticisms of their faith. I really do think it's very important. But yeah, thank you so much. Please double tap as much as you can be bothered. I very much appreciate it. Let's have another look here. Let's go. UC Rogers. UC, can you hear me? Hello, testing. Nope. Okie dokie. Thank you anyway for being patient in the queue. Perhaps next time. Let's try someone else. Life Coach Edu. Life Coach Edu, can you hear me?
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. It's wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for your time. Before we get into it,
brother.
hey, likewise. Before we do get into it, I really do want to just thank you for your time. I see no compelling evidence of any kind of afterlife. I think this is probably all we're going to get. So for sharing some of this incredibly valuable resource with us, thank you very much. Do you believe in a God?
I do.
Okay, which one is that?
I'd say the way I'd like to start it, because obviously it's kind of like a 1 + 1 = 2 scenario. I would go more along the lines of, architect, engineer, fine-tuner perspective. You've probably heard that argument before.
Okay,
so
sure.
I think that's a really important foundation to get anywhere else from there.
So would you say that you're a monotheist or a deist or?
Sure. So I think
like which one? Which one?
Yeah, absolutely. So whether it's like God or gods, and that God or gods has an entity or sort of ontological or primary causation, like the plural versus the singular is not that important to me, but it's more that there is this sense of spark that started this causation of cause and effect. That's what's the most important for me.
What do you think you can attribute to this deity or deities? Do you think that you can know anything about them? Do you think that you can ascribe any attributes or characteristics to them?
I mean, I only know my own human experience, right? I don't know your interior human experience and exterior experience. I only know my interior and exterior experience. So given some of that notion, I do think that there are some principles that have been pointed at. Now, whether that particular principality can be shown or proven in a sort of scientific route, that goes back to an individual human experience, which can be very challenging. But, I do adopt that there are some sort of universal values that are very key to human beings, one being the pursuit of happiness, another being the desire to give and receive love. And I would say, it is very fascinating to me, those in particular, the dynamic to give and receive love and the pursuit of happiness. For better or for worse, humanity has been very, very intrigued in those two topics for as long as we historically know.
Just to be clear, I'm asking whether or not you think you can ascribe any attributes or characteristics to the God or gods that you say you believe in. Not to humans, but to these deities that we can't really observe in any way.
Sure. So I guess I kind of think of this like a puzzle. So I'm a piece and you're a piece. And so if you put all the pieces together, we would presume that eventually you would have a whole. Now, the pieces have an element of the whole, right? And so, while at the same time, like the whole kind of shows what's the right language here? The whole is kind of detailed by the pieces. In other words, the most I could point to is
Mhm.
I would just say a sense of love and a sense of happiness would be like some of those virtues or values that have been very important to humanity. So for me,
So
the question,
also things like hatred and bigotry as well then?
well, that's part of the human experience, most
Mm.
definitely, right?
So would
But
they also, by this analogy, they would also make up some of what is intrinsic to this ultimate being?
sure, this is a good question. So this would
Mm.
now get into how do we define goodness, right? So I'm going to go off, the philosopher Aquinas.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the ways he defines goodness is the lack, or sorry, evil, not, or suffering for that case. So one of the ways that he defines evil or suffering, it is the lack of good. So it's not inherently a reality in itself. You know, it just lacks good. So
So would you
that's
say that
something.
good is the lack of evil as well then? It's kind of a bit of a,
No, no. It's basically like the light just is, and darkness lacks light.
I'm not sure that you can technically have one without the other, really. I think what you're kind of leaning towards in the best as I can understand it at this point is a sort of non-dualism, more or less, that that doesn't really actually quite not drive, doesn't actually quite jive with reality as much. It's a little more fantastical and thank you so much, and a little more. Uh, I think I'd probably describe it as a little bit toxically positive because it's ignoring the reality of all the pain and suffering that must be inherent in this ultimate being if it really does encompass everything. Do you see
Sure.
where I'm kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
getting at?
yeah, I can see the perspective. I respect that. I don't agree with the final, like, the way you define it, a toxic positivity, but, of course, you're free to express that. I guess what I would say is that, like, you don't it's not the yin and the yang concept. You don't have to have the evil to have the good and vice versa. So, sorry, it's not a vice versa. Yeah, good just is. Goodness just is. And evil or suffering or pain is the lack of the goodness. That's what it is.
Okay. So how do
So
you
it's a
account
glass.
for
So it's
all
a
of
glass.
the pain and
So
suffering?
the glass has water, but if it's empty, in other words, darkness, suffering, pain, that's the lack of.
I think if you're to use like the glass half full or half empty analogy, I think I'd be the kind of person that says it's likely that there's a glass with water in it, given
Sure.
that I'm observing one, and there is an amount that is relatively small or relatively large, depending on your perspective. Um,
Mm.
I think that's a pretty much an all-encompassing perspective on the water in the glass. Do you disagree?
Disagree with which part in specific?
Would you say that that's more or less an all-encompassing perspective on the water in the glass?
I
I'm not
guess I'm
being
not
negative about it.
understanding
I'm
that.
not being
No, no,
positive
no, no.
about it. I'm just stating what's likely to actually exist given the evidence that I'm being presented with.
Sure. If I'm hearing you correctly, I'm happy to agree that there's a glass, there's the empty space, and then there's water.
Well, there's also, you know, the surface it's resting on and the air around it and the
Yes,
impurities in
yes,
the
of course.
water and the observer and, the distant galaxies that are however far
Yes.
away from the glass, all of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are definitely
Sure.
part of the part.
Sure. Okay. So, and would you say that you equate all of this in its entirety to God?
when you say all of this, can you define this?
Well, I guess anything that we can account for, or you
Oh,
say,
sure. Like
or you
you mean
really, or you,
existence? Existence, like everything that exists.
yeah,
That, yeah, absolutely. I would say
okay.
once again the best way I can see it is once again this concept of an engineer, an architect, a fine tuner, so on and so forth. Like that individual or individuals is God.
So you're under the impression that there must be some kind of conscious, uh, intentional entity responsible for all of this. You don't see that it's possible that it might just all be energy condensed into matter over a long period of time, becoming complex and organized. You don't see that. You see that there must have been some kind of conscious entity that deliberately, figured all of this out and made it this specific way.
Sure. So I'm absolutely not going to deny that there's energy and matter in the universe. That would be that would be absolutely insane for sure. But I think there's also some understanding, or at the very least, there's this question of what caused this spark, right? What created that move of energy? What created that initiation of matter, right? And when I ask that question, the answer just basically becomes that concept that I gave before. The engineer, the architect, we can, for the sake of this conversation, call it God. Yes, Daniel dissipated. Daniel, you there, buddy?
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm so sorry. My connection just went berserk. Hold on. I'm just getting my shit together, so to speak. Hold on. All right, I'm back.
All right,
Sorry.
my friend. All good.
Um, okay, cool. So the last thing that I remember was you saying that. Thanks everyone who's still here, by the way. I appreciate that. You're saying something along the lines of you feeling as though there has to be some kind of fine tuner or some kind of conscious entity behind all of this, in order to account for, I guess, what you might say, like the symmetry or the beauty or the precision, or is that more or less what you would put forward?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've read the Fine Tune Universe, I think it's pretty in line with that.
Okay, sure. Uh, do you think that it necessarily must be that that's the case, or is that just a belief that you subscribe to, given that you can't really know for sure?
Sure. So if I take like my own existence or your own existence, right? But that's just two human beings for the sake of this example. We got the protons, the neutrons, the atoms, the subatomic particles, so on and so forth, right? And all of that has to work in such a precise mathematical way to exist, because if it doesn't, basically we don't exist. Now, when we get into how does the planet go around the sun in such a mathematically precise a way, How does gravity work in such a precise way that, the ocean is not floating up in the atmosphere and so on and so forth, right? We could give lots of examples. There's just so many mathematical and scientific precision points that just kind of go back to this idea that there is indeed, an architectural design or sort of engineering design in the same way that, we get clean water coming out of the faucet, right? It has a process of mathematics and science so that it can work.
I really do think, in my opinion, that is to, similarly to what I said to an earlier guest, I think it's to just like jump to a conclusion a little bit too early, I think that the reality is that we have no idea what lies beyond the observable limits of our universe. It could be the case that this is one of an infinite number of universes, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know that that's not the case. We don't even know
absolutely.
that we don't even know that this one is infinite. It may have a boundary that we simply can't observe. But if we are to really kind of humble ourselves and say, yeah, look, the truth is that we don't know. We don't have definitive answers as to why things are the way that they are. If we allow ourselves to actually entertain theories that are just as likely as any other, then there are theories like multiverse theory, right?
Sure.
And if the multiverse is real and it could potentially be infinite in and of itself, and there are infinite other universes, then statistically speaking, one of these infinite universes, at least, technically an infinite number of them, would have the necessary environment for life to emerge after however much time, right? But that still
Sure.
doesn't suggest that there's a creator. Or sorry, doesn't prove that there's a creator. Because this theory still only really relies on quantum fluctuations in an infinite field of energy, And we could really keep going, well, who made that then? But then if we were to say, oh, there must be some kind of God, then we could just say, well, where did that God come from then? Who made them? And then we hit an infinite regress, right? We could do that infinitely. If we are to do what I think is honestly a bit boring and honestly kind of intellectually lazy and just say, oh, well, there must be some kind of uncaused cause or some kind of conscious entity that's responsible for setting things up in this exact way. Well, and that nothing created them, they just have always existed, or that they created themselves or something. That's just as absurd as saying, why don't we behave as though there's an infinite regress? Do you see? Like, either way, and they're not the only two options either, but either way, both are unprovable. And they're just as absurd as one another. And so whether or not someone subscribes to there being some kind of conscious entity that decided what the settings of this universe will be or otherwise, or whether you just think that it's all ultimately entirely random and that it really is just statistical luck that we've emerged to the state that we've emerged into, it really is just kind of a bit of a, it's down to a personality leaning, right? Like, if you prefer to act as though there's some kind of conscious entity, if you prefer to lean towards behaving as though there is some kind of conscious entity that decided all this, despite the fact we can't prove it, or whether you prefer to act as though there is no conscious entity, and this is all what it is either way, it's really just a bit of a personality difference, isn't it? Because you can't prove either position.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, brother. And
Okay.
that's why this conversation has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, right? Nobody has quote unquote cracked the code, right? I'm on the side of, engineer, architect, causation, so on and so forth. or potential an ontological causation, which it does have some logic to it. There's errors, of course, and then you're on the side of, hey, let's keep asking the question and maybe just leave some parts of the story unknown or let it be a mystery or ... right? And they both have some beautiful logic to them and also some potential flaws. But let me ask you this, Daniel. Why, this is something I'm always intrigued about. Why do you think we care so much about this God question, or no gods,
Yeah.
or I'm not sure, right? Because that's what it's become. That's what, like, if we were to sum up these conversations, whether they're fights or debates or really intelligent conversations that Plato, Aristotle, so on and so forth, like it's always kind of gone into yes, God or God, I'm not sure, God or God, or no God or God. But the focus has always been God. It hasn't been,
Yes.
pink monkeys on the planet Venus, right?
Yes.
That's not the debate here. So
The
why do
word
you think?
represents a lot. Yeah, it
Yes.
does. It
So why?
stands. It's a placeholder for a pretty important concept, isn't it?
Yes,
I
exactly.
think
So
that I
why
think that the
do we
reason that it's
care
so
so much?
important to talk about is because what someone believes drives their decision making. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Oh,
Right. And I think
100%.
that right. And I think that if someone subscribes to something like theism, for example, or in a broader sense, just religion of some kind, then their decision making is liable to that religion. And what I see when I study these religions is that morally, I don't agree with them. I think that a lot of the time their morality is horrendous. And I don't want to live in a world that is governed by people who act as though any of these religions are real, right? I mean, it sounds to me as though you live in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Canada.
No, brother, I've been a nomad for 8 years. So
Got you.
I'm actually in Malaysia right now.
Sure. Oh, amazing. Beautiful place. Um, I think that surely you're aware, though, of what's happened in the last couple of years regarding the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the US,
Sure,
right?
sure. Yeah.
Right. And we know for a fact that that overturning was achieved largely by the manipulation of the religious masses. If we can indoctrinate people effectively enough into thinking that women should not get a say in whether or not they go full term with a pregnancy, because this book can be interpreted in a way that says we shouldn't do it, well, it's much easier to pass laws like that. And people suffer as a result, right? Ultimately, I care about minimizing suffering. So if my daughter were at some point to be subject to laws such as anyone who becomes pregnant must go full term regardless of their situation, I would be furious. I would be I'd be inconsolable. Like I'd be doing more or less what I'm doing right now times 100, right? The main reason that I'm on here is honestly, if I think about it, I think something that really motivated me more than I think anything ever had before was having a daughter and watching those laws be changed in the US. I realized that laws like that only come into place when people are too unaware or too lazy to do anything about it, right? If if no one challenges the religious, then they do what they can most of the time, look at history, to make everyone else do what they think they should be making everyone else do. Mostly so that they can get into heaven. It's ultimately entirely selfish, right? They can't prove there's a heaven. They can't prove that their heaven is even the real one out of the thousands that have been invented by different cultural groups. But they are convinced enough of the punishment of hell and the reward of heaven that they will force their beliefs on other people. and that causes suffering. And I don't like that. You know, I don't want that
Yeah,
for
of course.
people. So I
Yeah,
think
that's understandable.
that's why I personally think it's so important. What about you? Why do you think it's so important?
Sure. Is it okay, Daniel, if I ask a really juicy question based on what you just said?
Yeah, go crazy.
So let's just presume, just for a moment, that you concluded that God or gods or architect or engineer exists, just for the sake of philosophy's sake. Does religion then make more sense or less sense to you?
Less, totally, because we still can't prove any of it. I mean, even if there is some kind of entity out there, we have no way of knowing what it wants from us, if it wants anything from us at all. It might simply think this is just an interesting experiment, and it doesn't care what happens, right? It might not even know that we exist, right? This could just be a universe that it made for fun, that it's left on a side table and completely forgotten about. We have no idea what this entity might be like, or what it might want, or what it thinks is right or wrong. We have zero data. We've got zero information, other than what certain religious people claim this entity or entities have revealed to them. But if we're going to go off of what random religious people claim to have had revealed to them, that's the same standard of evidence that a schizophrenic can give us, that their hallucinations are real, right? But we understand through the technology that we have so thankfully developed that a schizophrenic's hallucinations are not to be treated as real. They're entirely generated by the brain. They're an aspect of the mind, right? So when a religious person says something similar, like, well, Jesus came to me in a dream and said that I have to drown my triplets, and then they do it, that's suffering that I see as unnecessary and that we can't justify with any evidence that anyone can actually substantiate, right? I'm not saying that
Yeah,
religion is analogous to mental illness. I really don't think that. I think that no one can help what they believe. I don't think that's how belief works. But what I'm saying is that it can lead to the same thing. And I'm not just comfortable with letting that go unchallenged.
yeah, fair enough, brother. And I think challenges are good. I mean, I always say this sentence that we can disagree, but we can maintain respect, right? And that's really
Of course, yeah.
key, which is something I appreciate with this conversation because, mine is slightly a different lens on that for sure. But because, well, I'll tell you this much. I was a pretty intense atheist, and I'm not presuming you're an atheist. I'm just giving my
Oh,
short
yeah.
testimony that from 12 till around 18, pretty intensely atheistic, almost to the point of like wanting to evangelize people into atheism, right?
Sure.
And then, of course, I developed this methodology or this perspective of, what we said before, architect, engineer, some sort of a original cause, if you will. And then from there, for me, because it sounds like for you, I asked you that question because I was curious what your perspective was to the question of if God is indeed legit or real, does religion then potentially make more sense, right? And so for me, what that ended up becoming is once I kind of took the perspective that there is this architectural or engineer concept, then it just became so what? Like what
Mm,
changes that now
yeah.
that changed? Because for me it was no, 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 no. And now it's like, okay, maybe yes, maybe yes. But if I'm going to change from no to maybe or yes, what does that change for my life? What does that do for my life? Like, is it just, okay, it's maybe or yes, and then I'm legitimately still sitting in the same values, ideals, and beliefs as an atheist. No, it wasn't that. It was now a new set of questions, a new set of process and journey, which then kind of challenges you to retune the ideals, values, and beliefs. Which those are three words that I think are absolutely essential to humanity. You know, ideals, values, and beliefs. That kind of encompasses a lot of what we do and do not do, right? So, anyways, I think that was interesting reflection that you gave as well, and I wanted to give you my side as well.
I appreciate that, man. I really do. Honestly, this has been a great conversation. I've loved having you on. I have just realized what the time is. I gotta
No
go.
worries, brother.
I gotta take
It's all
off.
good, my friend.
It's really late where I am, and I need, just for my own good, I need to go get some sleep. But Edu, thank you so much for your time. As I just want to bookend this by thanking you for it so much. I really do think it's the most valuable commodity anyone's ever had, you know, or ever will have. So thank you so much for sharing some with us, mate. I hope it proves to be an investment and not an expenditure, you know.
All right, brother. You take care, man. Happy dreams.
Peace and love.
Bye bye.
What a lovely guy. I've got time for Edu. I've got time for that, you know. Like I said, I really don't think that religious people or even people who believe in some kind of higher power or, you know, spirituality, I don't think that it's stupid. I don't think that it's immoral or anything. To reiterate, we can't help what we believe. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yet we can't help what we believe. Belief is not a choice. Belief is a phenomenon of the mind, and it is arrived at after our brain has taken in whatever sensory input it's taken in, and we, frankly, we don't get to choose what we're exposed to. We're born into a particular time, place, culture, context that we didn't get any say in, but all of it influences what we come to believe about reality, existence, profoundly. You don't get to choose it, you know. And the same can be said of religion. You know, you don't get to choose if you were born into a religious context. You don't get to choose whether or not you've been conditioned or primed for religious belief from a psychological perspective. This is not, you know, this is not something that just happens to stupid people. And I really don't even like that word. I really don't think it's a fair word either. I don't really, I think that you might be, you know, cognitively limited relative to others, but I don't think that stupid is really a fair word ultimately. No one gets to choose their cognitive capacity either. You know, I really don't think that's something that should be held against others either. But think about some of the most famous cults throughout history, right? These cults still consisted of doctors and lawyers and engineers, physicists, smart people fall for really poorly supported claims sometimes. That's just what happens. The human brain is fallible. Psychology proves this thoroughly. You know, like the human brain is so easily tricked. It is so easily led down the garden path and indoctrinated so much more easily than I think we realize a lot of the time. And it takes nothing away from how much respect I think we all deserve at the end of the day. But I think that these ideologies, these worldviews, these belief systems, these claims, that's what we should be angry at, or disgusted by, or resistant to, or repelled by. You know, I don't, to kind of turn a phrase, you know, you often hear religious people, more specific to Christians, you often hear Christians say things like, you know, I love the sinner, but I hate the sin. Right? Which is, it misses the mark a little bit in my opinion. But in a similar sense, I love the religious person. I hate the religion. I'm through and through anti-religious. I think I'm not just irreligious in the sense that I don't have a religion. I think religion is bad overall. I think we should not be religious. But I love religious people as much as I love non-religious people. I really do want to make that clear. Everyone is welcome here. On that note, thank you so much, everyone. I really do mean it. Look at that. Look at all those likes. Look at all these people still in here. We had a few hundred people earlier. It was incredible. I'm very, very grateful. Like I say, your time is the most valuable thing that I think you've got. I really do believe that. So for some of your attention, and some of your energy, and some of your time, thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful. I really do hope to see you next time. If you're not already following, please follow. We try to do this as often as possible, and I try to keep it real. I'm not interested in getting into fights with anyone. Hey, thank you so much. I'm not interested in getting into fights, but I will defend my position, and I'll try to do it as clearly and rationally and reasonably as I can. But I'm just more into conversations. I feel like we had some really good conversations tonight. Thank you so much for being here for them. Please enjoy the rest of your day, your night, your week, your month, your year, your decade, your century, your millennium, whatever. However long it is that you are conscious and experiencing for, I hope it's a good time. I hope it's as good of a time as I can help it be, at least. I'll give you the 10-second countdown for anyone who wants to see how many likes we can get. I think our record is like 3,000 likes in 10 seconds, which is pretty tight. But anyone who's not following, you got another like 10 seconds to do it, so you can catch us next time too. It's been real. This has been lovely. I've loved having every one of you. I mean it. Also, before I do countdown too, I really do want to thank anyone and everyone who's gifted or subscribed. It means a lot. As I've mentioned in the last couple of lives, I'm trying to save up for a bit of a better rig so I can maybe start reacting to content and start. I really would love to get a desktop so that I can actually download some decent software and really kind of build a bit more of a media collection, really a bit of a content collection for people to refer to help them deal with this question, I suppose, primarily, and other questions too. I don't always talk about this question. This is just what we mostly talk about, but I really would love to kind of expand what we're doing here. And so for any financial support in the form of gifts or subscriptions, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, mate. Thank you very much. I really will do the absolute best that I can with it. 10-second countdown. Let's do it. All right. What do we got? We're at 47.8. All right. Let's do it. 10. Thank you, mate. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. 0. Bonkers. Look at that. It's like 2.5K. That's almost our record. Like I said, I think our record is 3K. It's very good. I love all of you. Peace and love. Please take care. I'd love to see you next time. Have a good one.